Yes, Director Rick Erkeneff has.
Oh, thank you.
Staff ready? Board ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene the regular meeting of the South Coast Water District Board of Directors. And we were in closed session for the last hour. And I'd like to report on matters out of closed session. And tonight, Mr. Kidman will be making a report out of our closed session and making some introductions at the same during this period as well. Art?
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a closed session to talk about a prospective litigation tonight that arises out of a demand letter that we received under the California Voting Rights Act. The first thing to be reported on is in response to requests from both the board and from members of the public that the Water District ought to consider engaging other additional counsel or special counsel to assist the district in dealing with the California Voting Rights Act. And so that has actually been in the works for a little bit, and I'm pleased to report now that the Water District has engaged Mr. Ben DeMayo. He is a former county council, the County of Orange, and in fact worked in the county council's office for about 30 years before he retired. We've been able to bring him out, coax him back out of retirement to help us with this. And so I'm going to just introduce Ben now and ask him to tell the board and the public a little bit about his background experience with these voting rights matters.
Could you step to the podium, Mr. DeMayo? Thank you.
Hey, Rick.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I'm just saying hi.
Okay, Wayne Rayfield has joined us on the conference call along with Director Erkeneff.
Okay. Yes, Ben DeMayo. As Art mentioned, I was in the County Council's office for over 30 years representing the Registrar of Voters among the Planning Department, represented LAFCO for about 12 to 15 years. I handled the Board of Supervisors redistricting in 1991 when we had a Federal Voting Rights Act challenge. That's before the California Voting Rights Act was enacted. Successfully, I should say, defended the board. Represented the board in 2001 on their redistricting and then again in 2011. I've also represented cities, special districts, and school districts on the California Voting Rights Act. And as I think has been mentioned at previous board meetings by Mr. Kidman, the California Voting Rights Act is an extremely strong statute that has taken away many of the defenses that public agencies have to federal Voting Rights Act challenges that were successful. Many of those defenses are now no longer available under the California Act, and that is why to date no California jurisdiction that we're aware of has successfully challenged or defended a California Voting Rights Act challenge. Recently, I know there are a few cases that have been mentioned here before. City of Santa Monica lost after spending millions of dollars in defense and having to pay millions of dollars in fees to the plaintiff, and they had Santa Monica brought in the largest law firm in the state of California, made some excellent arguments, but lost their case. The city of Poway went to by district elections. There was litigation filed alleging that violated the Constitution and federal law. That case was lost at the U.S. District Court, and just in December was lost at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So there is no federal relief against the California Voting Rights Act. And with that, if there are any questions, otherwise I will sit down.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Sir. Continuing, Art, with your...
Yes, thank you. So, in addition to introducing Mr. DeMeo to the public, we ended the last meeting with a resolution of intention to comply with the California Voting Rights Act, put on the table, and with instructions to me to try to engage Attorney Greer, who filed the demand letter, to see if we could work out some kind of resolution. Excuse me. I know we don't like people coughing these days. A little frog in my throat. So, Mr. DeMeo and I have engaged Mr. Greer in discussions. This was discussed, a set of terms was discussed with the board in closed session tonight, and the board has agreed to pursue those terms, or instructed me to pursue those terms. In very, very broad outline, the terms that have been discussed would hold the district to having at-large elections for the 2020 election and not require the district to go to division elections this year. There's a couple of really important reasons for that. One is the time to get this done before the election in 2020 is pretty compressed. Another is that we'd have to do it again in 2021 after the census results are out. So that does seem to be sort of a public resource allocation issue that's worth trying to work around, and we found agreement to be able to do that. When the process to implement these agreements in principle that have been reached only between council at this point is to bring back to the board, once we have completed documentation, we will bring it back to the board and present it in open session in one meeting, and then wait until the next meeting before it is adopted. So there'll be two opportunities for public input on what is intended as by way of resolution of moving forward. And that would be done, I would hope, by the end of April, just as a target time. That depends on how long it takes to work out the details and to prepare the documentation. And then, so that'd be the process. There's two big items. Another resolution of intent, like the one we put on the table, only it will describe the new timeline that I just described. There will be a second resolution for dealing with the water district, investigating the feasibility of pursuing any kind of action to re-annex South Laguna and other areas of the district that may be disenfranchised. And that's as far as I can go because we really haven't gone further than that in terms of getting this put together. But the board thought it was important to report out what the progress has been and the efforts to try to satisfy some of the comments that have already been raised by the public since we became engaged against the Water District's will, by the way, in this California voting rights process. So that's all I have to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Art. As those of you who have looked at our agenda know, this is not an agenda item for this evening, so we will not be taking any further discussion by the board on this topic, although we will be taking public comment during the regular public comment section, which is next up on our agenda. Any directors have anything further? Or Rick, did you have anything to add?
I have a quick comment. Just to be clear, Art, and you did make this process clear, but I just want to make it crystal clear that the resolution timeline that you were looking at was the April timeframe, and then thereafter would commence the overall effort. And again, I want to emphasize that we're not in a rush to get this done. So we're very interested in hearing what the public has to say, and everything that has been brought forward. First of all, I appreciate that. It's been part of this process in taking a deeper dive into voter disenfranchisement and some other issues that are in flux. So I do appreciate the comments that have come forward, and we look forward to a continued process that will move forward for starting in the middle part of this calendar year, moving forward. I also wanted to assure the public. This week I've received some letters as well regarding how our rates are structured on the fixed versus commodity and where we have it in the property tax. And I do want to assure the public that we've had this information since 2016 when we made those rate adjustments. And we will be cognizant to make sure we remind the public or make sure we inform the public how our rates are structured moving forward. So it was a good reminder, and I appreciate that. So that would end my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Art. Mr. DeMaio, welcome. We're very glad to have your services. And with that, I would like to move to, unless there's something else, move to item F on the agenda, which is oral communications and comments from the public. I have 3 sheets in front of me at the present time, and I'd like to call Michelle Monda to the podium as our first speaker.
All right, Michelle.
Thanks a lot. I was just going to add up.
If you need more time, I'll be happy. I can take another person first.
Add it up and let you know.
All right. I was going to try to take these by subject matter, so we'll take this other subject matter first and ask Roger Howland if he could go to the podium and speak to his matter.
Thank you. I'm Roger Howland. I haven't been in a meeting like this so formal with as many attorneys since my last parole hearing, so I hope this goes better than that. I'm a homeowner in the Seascape Village community in San Clemente. It's a community of the north part of San Clemente, 301 homes that actually form the southern boundary of the South Coast Water District. If you look on the map, it's almost off to the right side, the very edge of the boundary up against the golf course. We form about 3/4 of a mile of that boundary. Our homeowner association irrigates about 12 acres of common area grass and slope. Back in, I think, around 2014 or 15, our association first asked this district about potential savings for things of turf removal, possible water rate reductions, and things like that. We have paid over $1 million in water charges in just the last 5 years. And the same as all customers, a portion of every dollar goes to providing for the maintenance of the irrigation system. And also it's stipulated a part of it's for the availability of recycled water to the different parts of the district. And that typically is provided for irrigation non-potable that's at a reduced cost that's available to the entire district. Although we've contributed financially every month in the payment, as of yet the infrastructure providing that hasn't been put into place to bring the purple pipes down to our part of the district. I've learned that this council has determined that that capital expenditure to go that far south wasn't justified. A pragmatic and operational decision that has to be made, but it affects that geographic area. I believe the council does not feel that this area does not deserve the benefit of that program, but that I don't believe that the inequality of not providing reduced rates to that area is because of our geography, but more operational. But I think we would agree that it's a benefit that should be shared equally across the entire district when that infrastructure is in place. Seemingly, it just wasn't in the budget to go that far south. And from what I've learned, I don't believe that it's in the planning phase for the next 5 to 8 years as well. I feel strongly that inadvertently we have been denied the 8 to 12% reduction in rates for the non-potable water that we've been having to pay since that time. I believe our first request when this district provided information to our homeowner association dates back to 2015. It's a costly alternative to take advantage of water conservation. It would be costly for our association to enter into that. That would involve the costly planning, the modification, removal, alternative plant selection, and things like that. And my contention is that as a trade-off for not putting in the $2,000 or $5,000 per acre that it would cost to bring the purple piped water to the south portions of the district, that some thinking outside the box may be justified as a trade-off in place of that. There may be ways for a per acre grant or incentive from the district toward our shared goal of responsible water use. It would be something that this council perhaps could consider. If this is something that could be agendized and given prompt attention, we would appreciate that. Secondly, allow me to express my concern about the more immediate issue, the voting rights issue regarding proportional geographic representation. I believe...
May I ask if you could hold on that particular portion of your remarks, because we will be talking about that in a separate area, and I've seen that your time has gone a little bit long, but I'm happy to bring you back to the podium to talk about that in just a few moments, if you don't mind to wait.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to make a comment or maybe a little clarification. In 2016, when we did the rate studies, was it at that time determined that we were on one water?
That's correct.
And one water meaning whether it was recycled, stormwater, or potable water, it was the same cost, the same price.
Recycled water and potable water. Correct.
So there's no discounts for recycled water.
There is essentially a discount because they don't pay a peak charge. So it's roughly,
Peak charge.
yes, it's roughly 90% of what they pay for potable water.
The peaking. Okay,
Roughly.
it's the peaking.
No, but I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. The recycled water cost is roughly 90%, or the recycled water rate is roughly 90% of the potable water rate. So you're getting a 10% discount
Okay,
if you're
very
receiving
good.
recycled water.
And I know also, I think, isn't it also, we had that same concern with Caltrans, and we were not able to service Caltrans along all the new construction that went on.
That's correct.
So we have an agreement, I believe, with the city of San Clemente that the city of San Clemente would provide the recycle because they have it in the area. So I don't know if that's something we can work on. We can agendize that and talk about it, maybe
Right.
explore that with the city, because they have lines and we don't. So that's an option, perhaps.
Is it appropriate to respond to that?
Let's go on to these other items, and then this will become an agenda item in the future, and at that time, then we can have a very full discussion about all these matters. But your comments tonight are what caused it to become an agenda item. Yes, Carolyn Novata, thank you.
My name's Carolyn Novotny, and I am the vice president on the board for Seaskip Village Owners Association. And first, I'd like to thank Roger for all the time and effort that he's put into it as one of our residents. We're all volunteers, and we all try to get what we can get done during the time period. I know that the board has been in discussion off and on for at least probably the last 10 years about trying to get the recycled water up into the area, along with some of the other associations that are along the Miracosta area. And we appreciate your time and energy trying to figure out a solution. It was rough going through the drought time. We tried very hard to reduce our water use. As an association, not only do we pay for our common area water, but we also pay for all of our residential water. And so our water bill is probably one of our biggest expenses as an association. So I just want to express my gratitude to you guys for taking this up and helping us find a solution for everyone can work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Michelle.
You're not gonna like this one. I know I don't.
So, Michelle Monda, South Laguna. I just want to say I'm actually in shock that the board actually listened to. I wrote an email, and I'm beyond delighted that you guys actually listened to the requests and have taken them into consideration about the districting, specifically about the census, waiting for the census, and trying to incorporate South Laguna. I'm literally over the moon right now. You've given me everything I've wanted, that you're at least bringing it up. The second thing I wrote about, that I was going to ask about tonight, was the fact that my husband pays our taxes. I really don't pay too much attention. Because of the districting, I've been aware of what's been the water. And lo and behold, I found out that I had not just $100 water bill, because I live in a canyon that I have to water. And actually, the sprinklers broke, and we got a $7 water bill, and we were shocked. How did that happen in December? Well, it was because of the sprinklers. We pay we have a $100 water bill a month, and that goes to water the canyon as fire protection. So anyway, that's what I thought my water bill was, $100 a month. Well, I'm surprised, but it actually comes to, on a yearly basis, your fixed cost that you were talking about is $2,299.60. And there's a whole bunch of things on here. I have no idea what they are, so we'll be calling to see if somebody can explain what it is. Metro Water, Water Capacity Service, Water Peak Demand, Metropolitan Water District Standby Charge, it looks like, Laguna Beach Solid Waste, and Sewer Block Rate, and that comes to $2,300. So anyway, I just want to say I'm very grateful for you listening and doing something about that, and I'm just blown away. Maybe we could let everybody else know. I mean, if there's something else I could do to conserve, I would love to know. I'm sure this rate is reasonable. I don't know, is it? So anyway, but I had no idea as a silly taxpayer that I was paying. I thought it was $100 a month.
Thank you, Michelle. We have staff members here who will be very happy to sit with you and to review the details of your bill and explain each and every item on there. And hopefully that will set your mind at ease. And would you like to return and talk about the voting rights, Mr. Howland?
Can I just make a quick
Thank
comment
you.
regarding that? sorry. I've seen in some of the other utilities, they have a how to read your bill, like insert. I don't know if we've developed one of those, but if not, maybe we could, that explains what some of the charges are, like the Met standby charge and things like that.
Got it.
And gives the customers a way to be able to read their bill and understand what all the charges are.
Yep, good point.
Your website has an excellent description of those charges, but an insert in a bill might be real practical as well.
Correct, yeah, thank you, yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Holland.
Thank you. I only think I had one more sentence. I'm saying, allow me to express my concern about the more immediate issue, the voting rights issue, regarding proportional geographic representation. I feel this may further isolate and possibly penalize the southern region due to the disparity between the tax base represented by a 92672 zip code on the right side of the map and a 92651 zip code on the left side of the map. I'm sure at some point there's an algorithm that is used to determine financial justification for capital expenditures, such as the infrastructure for recycled water. And so my concern about the redistricting or going to a district as opposed to an at-large voting process would be that may further harm that region if it's separated out based just on the geography, even though we haven't, being a member of the entire district, haven't received the benefit of that reclaimed water. I'm concerned that it might put us in an even less favorable position if we make that change. That's all.
Thank you. Jody, do we have any other requests from the public to speak? All right. Thank you very much. Before we go on much further, I would just comment about the general setup of our room tonight. The staff here has worked hard with the members of the public health cadre in our community to establish a meeting room that is safe for all of us. And as we continue on in these areas, we're going to be seeing more and more of social distancing. So our chairs of our guests here are separated. The directors are more separated. We do have two directors who are joining us by conference call this evening. Director Erkeneff and Director Rayfield are joining us by phone. One other item that I would note is that the three directors that you see in front of you are not thinking that they're sitting at the City Hall of Hawaiian Gardens, but rather we have a special celebration that we want to do tonight because our general manager is approaching a very important milestone birthday, and so that's the reason for the way your board of directors is dressed this evening. So,
well, it's a water theme, too.
It is a water theme as well. Thank you. So with that, we'll continue on to item number G, or item G in the agenda, consideration of meeting requests that are outside the district ordinance number 205. Any such requests?
No, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is our consent calendar. We have two items on the consent calendar this evening: approval of the board minutes of February 13 and request for leave of absence.
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any comments from our remote directors? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote to approve. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Our future votes tonight will be by roll call so that we have no further confusion on the telephone attendees. Thank you. That item is approved, and we'll move to we could do that. We're before we enter the action portion of our agenda, our new business. Let me just note that the special celebration this evening is for Mr. Shintaku's upcoming half-century birthday. He has not yet gotten there, but the day is around the corner, is it not, Rick? It's tomorrow. So
the public appreciates being invited.
And so as a consequence, we do have a cake. I did want to invite the directors to make any comments that they might like to have, and if we could, may I start with the directors who are phoning it in tonight?
You should call them by name so they know.
Wayne, are you able to make any comments?
Well, yes, I am. First of all, I want to wish Rick a very, very happy birthday on this momentous one. He's got a long way to go to catch up with me on age, but he's certainly getting there. And secondly, I wanted to thank Rick for all of the work and the insight that he brings to the district. So, all the best, Rick. Thanks, Wayne.
Rick, are you still with us?
Yes, sir. I would like to comment on, of course, Rick's approach as a general manager and really bringing what he'll understand and most will is Ohana to our district and to the community in general. And Ohana is a Hawaiian term for family. And I believe our district, it really does have a family atmosphere. We all care about each other. I know the directors, we're kind of on the outside looking in many times. And I apologize for not being able to be there tonight. And I would have worn my favorite Hawaiian shirt. And I know Rick and I have a bit of a competition going between wearing Hawaiian shirts. So I know we can't make a formal resolution to maybe have Hawaiian Shirt Day for the district maybe once a month. But I think it's really good for our community to realize that we are approachable. We do our business, but we do it in a way that brings the community together. And I really appreciate Rick's style. And a couple of years ago, I had my 50th birthday during one of our board meetings, and I lucked out and wasn't recognized. So anyways, I'll celebrate with you from afar tonight, and congratulations on making it halfway to 100, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
Bill?
Well, thank you, Rick. I'd like to welcome you to the back half of the century. And, I have on behalf of the board, or I should speak for myself, but on behalf of the board, I did solicit a famous person, former governor and former entertainer, to entertain you. And if you didn't know, Rick is a Hawaiian. And so that's why we go this direction a little bit. But the entertainer, because of the coronavirus, wasn't able to show up tonight. So I just took the liberty to, he sent you a little greeting here, and it says, Rick's 50th. Arnie and his ukulele wish you a very happy birthday from all your HANA board of directors. There you go. Awesome. And I'll pass this over. It's Schwarzenegger playing the ukulele. Here you go.
I thought you were going to sing.
Happy birthday. Well, no, you don't want to do that. I don't play the ukulele. I can sing, though.
Doug, anything to add?
Well, Rick, just want to wish you a happy birthday, and I've got my 50th coming up, so I wanted to get you some Hawaiian water. I'm sorry, it might be a little polluted. And consider this a gift/bribe to make sure that this doesn't happen on my birthday here.
Well, Rick, I would just say that life can somewhat be, in engineering terms, I'm going to look at, talk a little bit about it, some engineering terms, the bell-shaped curve. And if you look at the birthday that you're celebrating as the top of the bell-shaped curve, you've gotten you're very nicely positioned. You're almost ready to crest. But I would tell you that once you have crested the bell-shaped curve, the slide down the other side is very fast. And so that's just from my perspective as being on that side of the curve, I will tell you. Now I'd like to tell the rest of you a little story. And the story is about when Rick was promoted to become the general manager here. We had a very easy and very productive negotiation with Rick, but there was a time during that negotiation when we were talking about Rick's company car, and he actually said, "Guys," he said, "I'd really like to have a Ferrari for my company car." And we kind of looked in amazement and said, "A Ferrari?" I said, "This is Laguna Beach. I mean, we know that it's pretty upscale, but a Ferrari for your company car?" And he says, "You know, from the time I was a kid, I saw this Hawaii 5.0 and McGarrett and his Ferrari company in his Ferrari." And he says, "I'm not Hawaii 5.0, but he says, I'm Hawaii H2O. Well, Rick, we don't really have a Ferrari for you, but we do have a Lego Ferrari that I'm sure that there's a young boy at your home who will be very happy to help you build your Lego Ferrari for Hawaii H2O." All right. Does anybody else like to make a comment before? Otherwise, I'm going to take a brief recess and we'll cut the cake and enjoy some refreshment.
Well, before anyone embarrasses me, I wanted to thank everybody for this. Everyone who knows me knows I love to celebrate myself, so this is just. But really, I mean, this is one of the reasons you can see why I enjoy being here and why I call this. Someone wants to make a comment now. But it's one of the reasons why I just. Rick Arkaneff summed it up nicely too with Ohana. I mean, it comes from this board. I couldn't be more fortunate to work for this intelligent group, but caring as well for our customers. Sorry, and our employees. I really want to thank them. I mean, they're the type of folks that, I mean. Yesterday they surprised me. They all brought some nice treats and celebrated my birthday, and that meant the world to me. Leilani cooked her homemade kalua pig from Hawaii with the side of lomi. I mean that meant the world to me. Everybody coming together, but it shows how we get each other's backs here, and we really are helpful when we need help and when our neighbors need help, and that's the spirit that I believe this district brings to the table. So I'm very appreciative, and some people, and of course appreciative to my family who I get to go home to. So I'm lucky I have Ohana on all sides there, and people know I like to play golf now, so they tell me, well, how does it feel to be on the back nine? And I prefer my former sport, which is baseball. So I prefer fifth inning right now, and at least in the last couple of innings, maybe I can get some hits along the way. So. Really, thank you very much. This was a surprise to me, and I'm blown away. So thank you very much.
All right. With that, we will take a brief recess. Respect your social distances here during our recess, and we'll enjoy some cake. So let's reconvene our meeting in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, but there's a delay in there. I told him to come.
Oh, you were? And I thought, wow, that's not good. Will Clark comes along and he's born on March 16th on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, was it a leap year as well, like this one?
No.
Oh.
I have no idea.
Yeah, Greg.
Well,
50 divided by 4?
Andrew.
I don't think 50 divided by 4.
Wouldn't go.
Yeah, it wouldn't go.
44, 48.
Yeah.
No, just missed it.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, start your meeting.
You gotta give Mr. Norris out of here.
Sorry for the delay. I'm not gonna.
This is the first time I'm hearing this.
I got a sugar buzz.
Wayne and Rick, we will be commencing in about 1 minute, just waiting for Bill.
Could I have some more also? After that cake.
I know.
What you want to turn that on? Thanks, Mark.
Just a general note of information for those of you who are in the room and who've not been back behind the wall in the office here. There are at least a half a dozen or more staff members who are watching this meeting as we proceed in Rick's office on the big screen TV. And I don't think I saw any playing cards in there. In any case, they're joining us as well, but just one room away on a remote basis. Let's reconvene our meeting, and our item number 3 is the San Juan Basin Authority organizational history and alternatives. Rick?
Right. Thank you, Mr. President. Norris Branton was kind enough, by request. He's been a really, really nice help to us in understanding all of the auxiliary issues related to the potential options we have with San Juan Capistrano being absorbed, if you will, by Santa Margarita Water District, which what I'm being told should happen by LAFCO in the time frame of this summer, possibly late summer. So we got a head start on this and started talking about expenses and how they would be split up, and also governance. So Norris has a nice comprehensive presentation for the board, and I appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rick, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
What I'm going to do is take you through an overview, but try to get down to some brass tacks, because what I'd really like to get out of our discussion tonight is some general input from you as to what direction you think we ought to be going at San Juan Basin Authority. So let me get the slides going here. So history-wise, I'll just keep it short. We're almost 50 years old, and we're a JPA. Oh, 50 years old. How about that? Everything's 50 tonight. 50. Anyways, and it was formed as a joint powers authority among 3 agencies that really sort of watched each other and how they pumped groundwater in the area in the San Juan Basin. And those 3 agencies were the Capistrano Beach County Water District, which has been consolidated into South Coast Water District. That happened around 2000, I believe it was. Orange County Water Works District Number 4, which has changed names a couple times. Now it's the city has direct responsibility for water within the city boundaries currently, and the Santa Margarita Water District, which has been there the whole time. It was formed with a joint exercise of powers agreement, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit more detail. But that's the instrument that was used. The mission, and this is really a summary of the mission, is just to enhance the availability of water from the San Juan Basin which is a subterranean stream. It's not a normal groundwater basin where you got a cup and you fill it with water and you can take that water out anytime you want to. That cup is actually flowing constantly. It was set up, the JPA was set up as really a project collaborative. If you look at the agreement, it's really set up so that they can start to build things and potentially own them and operate and maintain them. That has changed over the years. I'm not going to go into detail on that tonight, but hopefully Rick will have a chance to talk to you about that at some point in time, how our mission has changed somewhat. So the background for tonight's discussion is that on October 1, the city told us that they're going to be withdrawing because they're going to be annexed into Santa Margarita Water District. That's the action that applies directly to the JPA. The annexation is something that is outside of the JPA. Effective July 1, 2020, and that's conditioned on LAFCO approval, of course. Got to get there first. And they have an annexation agreement. Hopefully you've seen that at some point in time. It stipulates all the things they're going to do toward that annexation approval. And so the remaining three agencies would be this agency, South Coast Water District, Santa Margarita Water District, and Molten Niguel Water District. So it looks like there's an opportunity here because we're going to be changing anyway. Our shape is going to be changing. We're going to from 4 to 3 agencies. And one of the big pumpers is actually being subsumed into, or pulled into one of the other members that isn't currently pumping. So there's some complications there. I'm not going to go into all those tonight, but it's an opportunity to make changes if we think that's appropriate. So what kinds of services and functions do we provide to the JPA? We being the 3 agencies, 4 agencies combined. SJBA, and I'll use that acronym hopefully through the whole discussion. We, the authority, have a water right and a permit for that water right. South Coast Water District has its own water right, and that came through a lot of discussion over many years. And originally that water right was owned by the Capistrano Beach County Water District, but is now under the name of South Coast Water District. So we have 2 water rights in the basin that are of great importance. We're also we do the monitoring and reporting. We do the monitoring and reporting for those rights permits. Both permits, we do it in a combined effort. We also do the monitoring and reporting for what's called the CASGEM effort, which is just keeping track of groundwater levels throughout the state of California. That was something that was done before SGMA was ever thought of. It was just the first effort on the state's part to try to understand what the water levels are in the state. So we do that. We also are doing the monitoring and reporting to SACWA. SACWA actually holds the wastewater permit and the recycled water permit for South County, but we're doing the monitoring of salts and nutrients within the San Juan Basin and providing that information, that report, to SACWA, who then includes it in their reporting, their compliance reporting. So three big monitoring and reporting. That's the big part of the biggest cost, at least the big part of the cost for the authority. Monitoring well system maintenance. We take care of all the monitoring wells that are out there, and we've got quite a few of them. So it's very helpful keeping track of the water. Basin management, we do planning, special studies. We were looking, as you probably are aware, we're looking at a bedrock high in the lower part of the basin. So we all got together, and that was paid for by Santa Margarita and South Coast to do that study as an example. The San Juan Desalter, we actually are the owner and the bond issuer of the San Juan Basin Desalter. There's some other complications in there. We actually lease property from the city. We then own the facilities, and then we lease those facilities back to the city. They operate and maintain them. So there's some agreements that are involved in that, and those will need to be changed when Santa Margarita takes over the city's water utility. Our JPA also provides an interagency forum, and I think this is probably one that's important to South Coast. Talking about water rights, who's going to pump how much, and just organizing that in a way that is collaborative and cooperative. We also So along with that is basin management. We keep track of the water rights, but we also proactively manage the basin. And then SACWMA membership is a recent thing that basically the members of the JPA decided it would be nice to have another seat from a little different perspective on the SACWMA Executive Committee, which is the South Orange County Watershed Management Agency, Authority, I can't remember what it is. Anyway, so we do that as well. We have a seat on that. Keeping moving here. Okay, so additional services that we've talked about from time to time, and you probably are aware that the authority has seemed like a great opportunity to do lots of things over the last 50 years. And there have been discussions. It's gotten smaller, it's gotten bigger, it's gotten smaller again, it's gotten bigger again, based on what's happening in the water industry. And so there have been discussions over the last 50 years on other things we could be doing. One of the things more recently is regional messaging on watershed issues and conservation. Shouldn't all the cities that are within the watershed kind of be saying the same thing about, how you keep track of what's going on in your storm drains, for instance? Expanded arundo management. The county got a big grant and did a lot of arundo removal in the main stem of the basin. And we're looking at probably doing the ongoing maintenance of that. We're looking at probably $10,000 to $15,000 a year, shared by all the agencies. New joint water projects. Updated conjunctive use studies. Are there some more ways we can use the basin? This has been talked about since day one of the authority, but there are always new opportunities, especially with indirect and direct potable reuse nowadays. Are there some opportunities to use the basin for storage, more storage? New joint water projects, maybe another well field, who knows? Expanded geographic influence, there have been discussions about, well, maybe Aliso maybe ought to be part of this discussion because it's really all one watershed unit as far as the regional board is concerned. So should it be expanding? That's a question more than a statement. Potential application of Sustainable Groundwater Management Act principles and concepts. We are rated as under SGMA as being a very low priority basin, which means that we don't have to go out and apply SGMA and form a GSA, a groundwater sustainability agency, and do all that work, which is very expensive. But there are some concepts that SGMA introduces that might be of value to us. One of the reasons that the SGMA, the SGMA, does not apply to us as well, beyond just being very low priority, is that we are, again, a subterranean stream. And it's very unclear, and most people have said, most opinions have been that SGMA does not apply to subterranean streams because they're already regulated by the State Water Resources Control Board. But there are some concepts in SGMA that we may want to look at some point in time. Functions not considered, things we just really aren't thinking about, or recently anyway, is being an arbiter and enforcer of water rights. That really belongs to the State Water Resources Control Board. Watershed manager, SACWMA has stepped in. They're trying to be the watershed manager, and it's a tough one. It's a little bit for them. I think it's a little bit of herding cats, trying to get everybody to agree on what that means even. But it is a good IRWM, the Integrated Regional Watershed Management. That's the term that's used across the state. They're the IRWM group for South County. Stormwater quality monitoring improvement, that's really belongs to the county and the MS4s at this point in time. There's nothing to say that our agencies aren't involved in that by any means, but the responsibility is theirs at this point. So now, those are the functions and services. So taking those into consideration, what can SJBA look like? What should it look like? So I just laid these out because they've been talked about, again, at different times by different people. I tried to encapsulate everything from number 2, which is no JPA, to number 3, which is an expanded JPA, really the watershed management approach, basically. And then 1A and 1B are closer to what we're doing now, and we'll talk about those in a little more detail. The four alternatives define the range, as I mentioned before. Minimum change to JPA would be continuing the current structure, which means Moulton stays in, you guys stay in, Santa Margarita stays in. No real change in the services and functions. We continue to operate basically the way we are now. We've contracted administrator. That's me. I didn't introduce myself, but I'm the administrator for San Juan. And the split that this is one of the things that came up that Rick had mentioned already. There was concern about, well, okay, so the city leaves, who pays for their part? And Santa Margarita has recommended they just go ahead and pay everything the city would have paid. So for administration, as an example, the general administration tasks, it would be a 25, 25, 50 split. So they would take over 50% of the costs. Now, the voting is something that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now, but I do want to say that Santa Margarita has also recommended is that we keep it a one agency, one vote approach. So you're really looking at consensus for budget. For most other actions, it's majority of the membership. So if we have a quorum, then everybody's got to vote. If we have more than a quorum, we have four agencies at the meeting, then 3 of the 4 could vote for one of the actions, and it would pass. Without going into all the details about that voting, I think we want to keep some flexibility in terms of that. As an example, when it comes to groundwater issues, Moulton Miguel really has no facilities and no water rights within the basin. And so should they be voting on groundwater issues? So that's just an example of why I think we need to keep some flexibility as we move forward, but we can talk about that more.
Question, you just
Sure.
said 3 of the 4 agencies, but right now it's saying continue current structure with Moulton Miguel, South Coast, and Santa Margarita. You're referring to the current 4 members, or in future would there be 3 members?
In the future, there would be 3. Yes, that's correct.
I just wanted to clarify, because when you said 3 of the 4 can vote
Yeah.
for something, I'm like, you've only got 3 on the list there.
Yeah, I'm
Wasn't
sorry.
sure
Yeah,
if you were including
currently,
San Juan as a second
right.
vote for.
Yeah, currently the majority is 3 out of 4, but going forward it would have to be, 2 out of 3? Yeah. Duh. So does that clarify that? Okay, good.
A little while ago, we got accused of being a lawyer.
Okay, and then 1B is a little bit different from that. And what this one, under this one, it would be only South Coast and Santa Margarita. Moulton Miguel would instead get their services through a cooperative agreement with San Juan Basin Authority. The concept here is that it gives Moulton Miguel an opportunity, if they want to take it, to not pay as much as they're paying now, because they're paying a little bit more for being a member. They have not expressed their interest yet as to what they want to do. So this may or may not happen. It's really kind of up to some degree, it's up to Moulton Miguel as to whether this one happens. With that said, we can do a combination of any of these going forward. But I want to I laid it out as 4 so that I can get some input as to which ones you like as a board. This one would be focused on groundwater management only. So all the SNMP stuff, we're thinking that probably would go over to SACWA directly and have them do the monitoring reporting. This isn't decided. This is just an initial thought. Quarterly board meetings instead of doing monthly board meetings. Bi-monthly tag meetings, we think it's good to keep the technical folks meeting more often. It could be either a contract administrator, maybe even reduce the number of hours that you need to pay for, or it could go to agency staff like it was before with Santa Margarita Water District. I think Dan was the administrator. I'm not sure if Moulton ever took that role on. I don't think they did in the past when it was housed at Moulton. And then the 25-25-50 split remains for administration. And it would have to be a consensus vote, right? If you only have 2 members, you got to both agree on everything. So then the next one is no JPA. And so you would the concept here is you discontinue the authority completely. You terminate it. And then you provide all the services under cooperative agreements. When I say all the services, it's really monitoring and reporting, groundwater planning, I guess I'll call it, special studies. And so as you needed something, you would get together as a group and form a put together an agreement or making an addendum to an agreement, an existing agreement, whatever. It's just doing it by cooperative agreements. And then SACWA would administer SNMP, as I mentioned before. No board tag meetings. You don't need them because there's no JPA. So that's the concept there. Unless it says something in the agreements that you want to get the boards together once in a while, or at least get the technical staff together in a formal way. I've seen those types of cooperative agreements where you do have a forced meeting so that everybody gets together and has a forum. Funding stipulated in the agreements as far as splits go, so I didn't even take a shot at what that would be. Any questions? Sure.
A couple of questions on this one. On one of the first slides, you talked about the things that San Juan Basin Authority had. And one of the things the San Juan Basin Authority had, along with South Coast from Capo Beach, was a water right. Is discontinuing the JPA, how would that affect the water right? I know
that's a great question.
There was some stuff that happened with transferring the Capo Beach water right to South Coast and successor agencies. If you're disbanding the agency, where does that water right go? The other question I have is, you talked about the San Juan desalter being owned by the San Juan Basin Authority and holding the bonds related to it. What happens with that debt, and who's taking on that debt or paying off that debt?
The debt is completely owned by the city currently. The concept is it would be assigned to Santa Margarita Water District. As far as the water right goes, we have not touched that one yet because we want to get a sense of where everybody wants to go first before we start dealing with that. And we can have that discussion another time. I don't want to go into the details because it'll bring up a lot of other discussion at this point, if that's okay with the board.
It seems like that's one of the key things if you're going to talk about disbanding the San Juan Basin Authority, because that would impact San Juan's water right for using the desalter.
And my understanding is the agreement between, this is just my understanding, so I got to be careful with this, but between Santa Margarita Water District and the city, the agreement is that all the water rights that the city is exercising goes to Santa Margarita. So
but if the water rights held by San Juan Basin Authority, is it held by the San Juan Basin Authority, or is it held?
This is why I don't want to go. It is held by the authority currently. Yes, right. Which was a complication somewhere along the line, and I think it had to do with
I have to get
setting
all
up
my
the
lawyering
desalter. I think this is a good discussion at some point in time, and it may be just among yourselves, and then at some point in time a negotiation somewhere along the line here. So rather than getting into that, especially if this one is not chosen by the group, it may still come up in another form, but not the same because we're not disbanding. We wouldn't be disbanding. So that's that one. And then finally, the last one, the fourth one, but number 3, is expand the SJBA geographically and with membership. Trabuco Canyon Water District has expressed some interest in maybe coming back into the authority. They were in it for probably 10 years at one point in time. They withdrew. They may want to do it. There was actually discussion about other agencies like El Toro Water District. I think they were just looking for some more groundwater to have some kind of right to, even though they're not even within the basin. Or you expand the geography of the JPA beyond the basin. I don't know. That's a tough one. It's pretty complicated, I think, right, Art? Can be done, but a little complicated. Expanding of services, not just the geographic area, but the membership and the services that you provide. So watershed management in a more serious way. When I say more serious, I mean beyond what we have authority to do right now. You'd probably want to go get some authority somehow. That would take discussion with the cities and with the county and a bunch of other folks to try to do that. But we have talked about that at different times in history, about doing more watershed management, which is more robust, kind of the one water approach, stormwater, recharge, everything in one area, one forum. Monthly board meetings, tag meetings. So you'd want to meet more often if you've got a more intense job to do. You'd want to revise the JPA agreement. I think we're going to be revising the JPA agreement anyway, no matter what we do, just because it's time to update it. It's been 50 years, and there's stuff that is just we probably need to update. Contracted or staff administrator. There was some discussion. I don't remember who it was even said, well, maybe it shouldn't be a contracted administrator anymore. Maybe we ought to have an employee if we expand and have somebody who is really directly responsible, works directly for that agency. And the JPA is a public agency in and of itself. Anyway, that's a thought. Administrative funding, again, that's based on what our mission is, what our membership is. It's too hard to say at this point in time. It's a bigger unknown. So, what are the actions, sort of a range again? The actions that we need to modify the San Juan Basin desalter agreements to assign the lease to Santa Margarita Water District. They're taking over the utility for the city. And we need to update, in my mind anyway, we need to update the San Juan Basin Authority JPA agreement so that it reflects how we actually operate and has other things in it that make it easier to resolve disputes and things like that. Maximum would be work with the potential new members, update all the pertinent agreements, and there's a slew of them from 50 years. Some that need to be removed, expunged, and there's some that you just have loose ends that we need to tighten up. We would then also want to do some strategic planning, some serious strategic planning, and really understand what our mission is and what we're going to be doing, and then consider Sigma concepts to be applied as well. That's just a thought that goes into that. So that's sort of the range of actions that we would need to take, both as individual boards being part of the JPA and the JPA board itself. So the review process, this month, the three remaining agencies are talking about this with their boards. Santa Margarita Water District had their discussion last week. And I can share that after you guys have your discussion. And then this week here, and then Moulton, I think, is either next week or the week after that with, I think, a committee of their board. April 2nd, we're going to have a manager meeting, so I'm hoping that we have all our input so that on April 2nd we can start laying out a plan for what we're going to do, no matter what it is. And then the 14th, we're going to have, which is our next SJBA board meeting, our regularly planned meeting, we're going to hold a board workshop, a San Juan Basin Authority board workshop to talk about this and lay out what the manager's plan is for dealing with it. And then we're going to start work on the plan in May. Summer, again, as Rick mentioned, the LAFCO should be taking action, hopefully, so that we can all move on. And fall, whatever actions we're going to come up with, we'll start asking the boards or recommending those things to the board.
Norris, I apologize for interrupting, but I think this is the fitting time on this slide. I did want to give our staff credit for all of the interaction that they've been involved with the other member agency staffs. And so Steve Deshawn, who everyone knows as a groundwater production guru in the area, and our water resources manager, we appreciate all his efforts. And Joe McDivitt has been at these meetings. 6 feet away from Steve Deshawn is Joe McDivitt. And another 18 feet away is Mark Cerna. And Mark Cerna has been involved in this process as well. So.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate the input. It's been good. Next up, so the input I'm requesting tonight. First of all, which alternative or a combination of alternatives do you think would be good for South Coast Water District? And is there any phasing of that? And I guess I'll give away the spoiler alert. Santa Margarita Water District, what they recommended is going to 1B, which is the reduced JPA, and then ultimately moving toward cooperative agreements instead of having the JPA. So that's what they're recommending. So I only bring that up not to say you should do the same, but more, do you have a combination that you'd like to see? And if so, what kind of phasing do you think we ought to do?
Norris, I would like to begin by inviting Wayne as our longtime representative. I think for the last 4 years at least that I'm aware of, Wayne has represented South Coast Water District at the San Juan Basin Authority meetings, and so Wayne, would you like to start off with any questions, comments, or contributions?
Oh, thank you, Dennis. I'd like to start off by thanking Norris for what I thought was an excellent presentation and robust in terms of the various options. My thinking is, and I've given some thought to this whole matter, I think for this year, at least, and assuming LAFCO acts and everything goes forward as the city of San Juan Capistrano and the Santa Margarita Water District hope, that we should maintain kind of a status quo and see what experience, say, in the second half of the calendar year tells us. I'm okay with what Santa Margarita seemed, if I understand it correctly, opted for. And I think we just need to learn how the expected new membership and new roles will work long term, which wasn't part of your question, I know. But I have been concerned for a long time that there's really no one agency or NGO or group of any kind, and for people from the public, NGO meaning non-governmental organization, that looks after the entire watershed. And that might be a future role for the San Juan Basin Authority. I am concerned about the watershed and the environment for the watershed. It's given the length of that watershed and its breadth. It has a significant input on the quality of life in South Orange County, even into Riverside County. But having said that, I'm personally not inclined to make any changes right now until we learn a lot more pending the LAFCO action. Is that clear, or?
It was clear to me.
Okay,
and I'd like to echo what you said. I'm leaning toward a 1A, 1B. I think right now moving toward a disbandment of the JPA with the water rights issue and the ownership of the desalter, I think that opens up a nest of bees that we don't need to really get into, because I know water rights from being on this board in the past is a very expensive thing to dive into, and it starts involving a lot of other agencies that aren't local. And when you involve other agencies that aren't local, those agencies don't tend to have the best interests of the locality in their view.
Any other comments from the board? Bill? Thank you.
Could I see one of your earlier slides, Norris? I'd like the first one that really had keep going back even more. One more. There we are. I think there's a place, and I agree with Wayne to start off with. This year ought to just be a status quo, maintain, hold your course till everything shakes out. On this particular one, I see a lot of merit in the San Juan Basin being in charge of the water. Like Director Erdman mentioned, sure, South Coast has water rights, but sounds like we would actually have a little piece of the San Juan Basin rights as well, and that's going to be kind of difficult to dig out of there. So I think a little modification, I think that's kind of what Doug was talking about, 1A, 1B. And what I would like to see is, I know we're members of the SACWMA. What I really would not want to see us to go deeper into 2 and 3 when we start talking about watershed. I'm really, being a former regional board member, I just don't think we need to be in the business of having to do MS4s. And that is costly. It takes a lot of experience, and the county has dedicated staff that does that on a regular basis. And to take on those obligations just opens us up for fines from the regional board when things don't go quite right. We have enough concerns with water, our own water, and also going over the curbs, and as well as sewer spills and things of that nature. So I don't think we need to take on any extra liability in that area there. I'm not in favor of building an empire or a bigger staff, any of those kind of things. So I think somewhere in the 1A minus any kind of real obligation to do watershed, I think is probably okay for me. So, but if we go to less, I'm fine with going to less. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a correspondence from a member of the public, and I'll read this into the record and to you, Norris. Richard Gardner sends the following statement in. In addition to the choices, the main planning function for water resources could be handled at a macro scale. The supply alternatives may be led by MODOC, stormwater by OC watersheds, recycled water by SACWA, including treatment for direct potable reuse, and groundwater by a modified basin authority. Regional planning facilitated by MODOC would consider funding support for recharge areas, stormwater storage, and recycled water advanced treatment. Furthermore, the actual groundwater rights belong to the inhabitants of the Capistrano Valley and nearby areas. Long ago, the ranchers who drilled or dug wells in the San Juan Basin provided the basis for the State Water Resources Control Board provided our water rights. These water rights can be considered for the benefit of all people who reside in our basin. He goes on to say, alternative 1A, 3 voting members could change to a weighted vote based on the number of residents who receive groundwater. The vote of the San Juan Basin Authority could have remained at 4, and the residents of a financial improvement district, which is the city of San Juan Capistrano, could have a vote. Since Santa Margarita will pay 50%, it seems appropriate that they should have 2 votes. Alternative 1B, he said this is similar to 1A, and neither alternative brings greater regional planning to the structure. Alternative 2 does not provide additional planning or management of resources. Alternative 3 has the possibility of providing regional services. The expansion of services could be handled through SACWA. Agreements moving forward could be discussed by the appropriate member agencies. All regional planning could be conducted openly through the SACWA organization. The role of MODOC must be developed. And he said these are his preliminary thoughts to help improve the structure of the organization. Again, that was Richard Gardner's thoughts. I have a few comments and questions. Number one, I agree with the position that Wayne articulated that we should transition slowly. And this year maybe is not the year to make a change, but to embrace the change that is going to come as a result of the LAFCO proceedings. And then I wonder in the future if we were to go to the more expanded version. All of us here at the dais have heard from Mr. Kelly Rowe about the Sespe Aquifer, and would the San Juan Basin Authority then be getting into the Sespe Aquifer? Just what would that mean if we were to expand the boundaries of the Basin Authority? Also thinking about from the long past, if we were to expand and let's say try to bring in the city of San Clemente, the city of San Clemente abuts the San Mateo Basin, which both Mr. Kidman and I have had some long past association with, the possibility of using the San Mateo Basin as a water resource for South Orange County. And would the San Juan Basin Authority be able to play a role there in perhaps helping to develop that as a water resource? So that just goes toward the idea of expanding the geographic reach of the San Juan Basin Authority. I think it's important that the San Juan Basin Authority, that the mission be clearly established, because as time goes on, the missions change and the focus of how we do business changes. And I think that would really be important to articulate that mission. South Coast Water District operates the JRWSS. And I think we should look to the JRWSS as a model for perhaps how San Juan Basin Authority could operate. I think it's very effective. I think it's low administrative cost to the member agencies. But again, it maybe comes back to the mission. The mission of the JRWSS is to operate as efficiently and effectively as possible the pipeline from the coastal junction to the end of the system down at the state parks in San Diego County. And we run that system. I think we do a good job of it. And I think the member agencies I've attended those meetings here in this room, the quarterly meetings that take place. And by the way, those are quarterly. So I don't think that that's a bad schedule to have in terms of a successfully operating JPA can run on quarterly meetings and do a good job. The idea of sharing the administrative load among the member agencies, again, depending upon the mission that is undertaken by San Juan Basin Authority, that may be possible, or it may be better to have contract administration as we now have. So these are questions that are swimming around in my mind, and I think it's been a healthy discussion here tonight. I'd like to continue that discussion with staff and with the members of the other agencies, the directors and staff members of the remaining agencies, to see how they feel about it, and then hopefully come up with a good solution. Again, I thank you for being here tonight and for expressing the items that are on the slides here. It's very, very wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to see if Director Erkeneff has any comments?
Rick, you're at bat if you wish.
Yes, sir. I'll keep it brief. I think that this discussion, as robust as it was super critical. What we have in the basin, I think, is ultimately, as you just discussed, an untapped resource to its fullest extent. And us being, I'll say, partners in conjunction with the other agencies that, have rights to water and the ability to plan long term, I think is very valuable. The wild card in this is Molten Miguel. So I'll be curious as to how they as board and a staff respond to the ability to, be a part of any of the changes that'll come. I think it is prudent to take a long view and to take a slow pace at this. I don't think that, we're needing to force anything or move quickly to make any of the changes. I see a value in our agencies working together. You brought up, Director Kelly Rowe and the Sespe Basin. I think that's worth exploring and looking at a long term. I know the conversations I've had with Director Erdman, Dennis Erdman, about the San Mateo Basin, I think is worth exploring. And all of those have an extremely long view. They're very much over the horizon. And so, I think that we'll get to a point maybe between alternate 1A or 1B down the road. I would, be very much against kind of disbanding the Basin Authority think it's very valuable. 50 years in existence means something, and to change that at this point, I think, would not be advantageous for what our goals are as an agency and what we've participated so far regionally. So I'll leave that as my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else like to make any comments? Norris, do you have any concluding remarks you'd like to make?
No, only I appreciate the time and I appreciate the discussion. Very valuable. And so I'll work with Rick. And Rick, if you can help me, what I was hoping is that the workshop on the 14th, we can have the general managers of each of the agencies present what their boards are thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Next item, Bill has stepped away from the table for a moment, so let's go on to action item number 5, the AC water main replacement on Via California award of construction contract. And Rick, this is yours.
Mark Cerna will introduce the topic. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Rick. Thank you, President Erdman. Yeah, so this item is for a construction contract award for our AC water main replacement on Via California. A few months ago, we actually brought this item to the board just for information purposes to let the board know about the conditions on Via California where we had a water leak back in December. So we did have a line break that occurred within the bridge cell of the bridge crossing across the 5 freeway, which is in their Caltrans right-of-way. And so we did identify that the leak was coming from within the cell of the bridge itself, and there was a casing, a 16-inch casing that exists within there, which carries our 10-inch AC water main. And so we have identified that there was a break in that water line, and ultimately it was leaking out of the casing. So the decision was we needed to essentially replace this line as quickly as possible and deal with the situation because it was an integrity. It's an important line for the district in terms of serving our service area essentially across the freeway. And so we immediately, one of the decisions we made was that in order to properly repair this, you essentially have to remove the line and get in there to essentially address that issue. And so it did mean a very aggressive design process. So we immediately brought on board a consultant to prepare the design. We put a set of bid documents put together fairly quickly and assessed what was the best approach to essentially make that repair. And the project was put out to bid on February 13th this year. And we did have a pre-bid meeting. We had invited 5 contractors to propose on this project or bid on this project. We actually received 2 bids for this project, as shown in the staff report. There was the low bid, 2 bids of T.E. Roberts and Mike Perlich and Sons. The low bid was $366,600, which is deemed responsive. It was right within our engineer's estimate. We had estimated roughly $400,000 for this project, so they came in under the engineer's estimate, and so we felt it was a reasonable and good price. And essentially, what they will be doing is installing a new water line, but they will also be doing a liner within the casing. Now, there is some potential once they open up each end of the pipe, and there's a process that they're going to need to go through to verify. They're going to pull out the AC water main that's there. They're going to look at the integrity of that casing to make sure it's suitable for lining. We think it is, but there could be some potential issues in case that there is some integrity issues with that casing. We expect that it has some corrosion, but we think that the lining is a fairly robust liner that should be able to handle the structural needs of a liner, a casing, essentially carrier pipe for the new water main, which will be a PVC water main that will essentially push through. Once we get the liner in, we'll essentially put casing spacers and drive it through the bridge, and then we'll make each connection on each side of the bridge abutments. So that's the plan for the work. So we're looking at this project would actually go out to, once it's awarded, we would expect that construction would begin sometime in May, and we hope to finish that project within a couple months from that point. And we are still working on the Caltrans permit. We've been coordinating very close with Caltrans on this effort since the very beginning, since the break occurred. And so they're well aware of what we're doing. And so we're just acquiring the permit. And so the recommendation is to award this contract in amount not to exceed $366,600 to T.E. Roberts. T.E. Roberts is a very qualified contractor. They've done work for the district. They're located in Orange. This is what they do. They do pipeline work, so they're very familiar with this kind of work. And then we also to approve change orders if required up to $36,600. Be happy to answer any questions.
Members?
No, I'll make a motion that we approve this contract with the change order.
I'll second and wish you luck. I know the fun of working with Caltrans on getting permits.
Yes,
Mark-
we know that. Yes, thank you.
Mark, I do have a couple of questions. Number one, the existing AC pipeline will be removed from the liner. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, and so we know that concrete is strong in compression but weak in tension. So is this line going to be pushed out or pulled out?
I would expect they're going to be pushing it out, but we're going to leave it up to the contractor on their methods to essentially handle that. We haven't directed them on the exact techniques that they'll use to remove that line. So they'll be responsible for handling that AC pipe, and also, again, what's the best way to get that pipe out of there? Because there could run into issues. It could be challenging to get it because we don't know exactly the condition of that casing. It could get hung up. So there's definitely some concerns with that, but I think based on the design that they've come up with, our consultant and talking with staff on how we would handle it, I think it's T.E. Roberts is a good firm who can handle it, and they've done this kind of work before.
Did we have some as-built drawings of the existing pipe and how it was installed and whether it was put on redwood sleepers or how that went in the first time?
From what I recall, there were some as-built drawings, but the exact details of how it was installed, and ultimately they were old design drawings from, I think it was probably late 50s is when it was originally installed. It didn't clearly identify and get as-built at exactly what was installed. So from what they could see, when we did do the inspection of the line, we did de-water the line, we excavated, we looked in, and from what we could see, that it probably was some redwood spacers that was maybe there in the past. But when we actually looked at it, I think from what I recall, there didn't seem to be much of a spacer there. It seemed to be line on the bottom of the casing itself. So that's why we're not sure exactly the condition of the line from the internal integrity. When we video and tape the actual internal of the AC pipe, it looked good. You didn't see, there was no obvious breaks in the line. So we're expecting that the joints, there was some deterioration of the joints along the way. So we figured that's where the leak was coming from. And then ultimately the casing, which was holding the AC main, is where we figure it slowly corroded and then let loose.
From a hydraulic standpoint, was it not possible to do an in situ liner into this pipe like we do so many times in our sewer pipes?
Yeah, that was actually a consideration. So that was looked at as a potential way of solving the problem, and maybe that could have been a very quick fix. But again, not knowing the integrity of that casing, because we knew that the casing had failed and the water was coming out of that casing at some point along that way, which we couldn't visually see because we couldn't get to the outside of the casing. Within that cell, it's a very, very small cell that it was pushed through. We couldn't see the condition of the casing itself. We could only see the inside of the actual AC main. So the decision was, in order to do this right, let's spend a little bit of time and let's pull that line out and replace it because we won't want to get in there again if we can avoid it. So this should be a long-term, permanent fix, and we were able to do it fairly quickly.
Any further questions by the board, or if not, we'll do a roll call vote on this. Jody, would you call the roll on this motion?
Director Green.
Aye.
Director Dennis Erdman.
Aye.
Director Doug Erdman.
Aye.
Director Rayfield.
Aye, and many thanks to Mark for an excellent staff report.
And Director Urkeneff.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, that item passes. We'll return now to action item number 4, which is the Independent Special Districts of Orange County, revised LAFCO's due structure. And Rick, do you want to introduce this topic?
do a quick introduction, and you'll see why Bill Green will be briefing this. And Bill and Jody have both been extensively involved at ISDOC, and to the point that I run into folks who go to those meetings, and I get positive feedback every single time for both of them. So we thought it'd be best if Bill would present this item. Thank you.
Thank you. I know why you get positive feedback with Jody, but I'm not sure about the other part. Well, thank you for that introduction. I know this body knows that we're members of ISDOT, and for the public, the South Coast Water District is a member of the Independent Special Districts of Orange County, which represents the interest and provides advocacy on behalf of the Orange County's 25 Independent Special District. ISDOT was formed more than 30 years ago to serve the needs of Orange County's water, wastewater, sanitary, cemetery, vector control, library, recreation and parks, and other districts that provide special services within their communities. And some of those are like community service districts. And as we'll go on later, they have two groups. One is an enterprise districts, and the other are non-enterprise districts. So your community service districts, your CSDs, and those types of things are part of the non-enterprise. And your regular water districts like South Coast and sanitary districts, MoDOC and Orange County Water, are all part of the enterprise districts. A little bit of background. The ISDOT has to pay dues to LAFCO, and there's a certain amount that goes in annually. And the last time the members they did a formula on how to collect the dues from the independent special districts was done in 2001. But over the course of the past few years, there's been several inequities in the dues and the apportionments that were brought to the attention of the ISDOT Executive Committee. And so President Sandra Jacobs and the Executive Board assembled an ad hoc committee that reviewed the dues formula. And over the last couple of years, when Jody and I first came on to there was a tireless director from the Yorba Linda Water District, and Al Niederhood, and he kept bringing this drumbeat to the board of Yorba Linda's paying too much money, basically, compared to the other districts. And so the ad hoc committee was dormant, I think, for 6 or 8 months, and finally Al put enough heat under the fire, and they came through with the recommendations. And so, long short of it, they put together a factoring and how to factor the dues, and they came out with a chart, and it's in your let me see where it's in your handout attachment with 4A here. And the first part is the letter that President Sandra put together, thanking the ad hoc committee for their hard work, and I should acknowledge those as well. Director Al Naderhood from Yorba Linda, Mike Dunbar, the general manager of Emerald Bay, was involved in the 2001 formula as well as this current one, as well as Bill Nelson from the cemetery districts and vector control. There was Santa Margarita had representatives Rob Grantham, and also the Mesa Water District had Moron Kafaya. And anyway, they were all involved in putting this recommendation together for us. And at the February board meeting of the executive committee, I should say the committee meeting, the executive committee voted unanimously to accept the formulas as presented to the board. So now that there's formulas are out, they've asked that they being the executive committee, we've asked that go to all our members, the 25 districts, for their ratification. And so we're asked this evening to vote on that. As you can see in the table, go down to the second table. The first one is the factoring. The second table, as you can see, the South Coast Water District has today, let's see, back in the staff report, it talks about these numbers. It talks about today we are paying 26, and we're going to 22-ish. Those are in thousands. So basically, we are going to be saving $3,775 by the new formula, as well as Yorba Linda Water District and El Toro. And there are all, as you see in the formula, in the red, those are the reductions, and in the black, those are the increases. And some of the larger districts, like the Irvine Ranch, the Orange County Water District, and the Modoc, of course, they're large districts. They will be paying more. So that concludes my staff report. If there's any questions, I'm open. Even though I'm not staff.
I'm all for saving money. I'll move the recommended action.
Second?
Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Jody, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Director Green?
Aye.
Director Dennis Erdman?
Aye.
Director Doug Erdman?
Aye.
Director Rayfield?
Aye.
And Director Erkeneff?
Aye.
And that passes 5-0.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of our action agenda for this evening. And next item is things to be considered at our next meeting. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to offer?
I don't know if it'll be the next meeting, but I'm sure we need to talk to address the Seacrest folks, or Seacrest, is that right?
Seascape.
Seascape, excuse me.
Yes.
The folks in San Clemente.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, any other items? All right, then we'll go on to oral comments by staff and board members. I'll start with Mark.
Yes, thank you, Director. So the only thing I would like to just say tonight is that I want to thank Rick also for, well, first of all, happy birthday to Rick. Publicly say that. I already said that, and I ate cake and had food today, or the other day with him. But I also want to thank him for bringing me on into this group, hiring me almost a year ago, and making me a part, or allowing me to be part of this Ohana that he has been very much responsible for creating here. It's a great place to be. Thank you.
Good. Joe McDevitt in the audience, anything tonight?
That's what Mark said.
Jody, Lalani, anything tonight?
Well, I'll say happy birthday also, but also a little item of business that it's Form 700 filing time. So I sent out reminders, and lots of those reminders heeded some responses, but we have you all have until April 1st to get those filed. So thank you.
All right. From this side, Art, anything further, Art?
One more,
And Rick?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, obviously the entire region and nation and internationally is dealing with this COVID-19 virus issue. And there's a lot of recent news that has been coming out in the last 24 hours from the California Special Districts Association, California Department of Health, the County of Orange. In fact, they have a virtual town hall meeting tonight that took place at 6 o'clock. And CSDA had a call as well at 5 o'clock, so our staff were on those calls. We are taking it very seriously. I mean, they're from a wastewater perspective, a service perspective, there is no reason to panic, but there is a reason to be vigilant. So, as you can see, our boardroom, the chairs are separated by 6 feet apart. We are definitely internally communicating the need for the proper hygiene and the proper PPE for our guys out there. And, it's a perfect segue for me to recognize our people, especially those in the field that take, on an everyday basis, coronavirus or not, they take the system operation and maintenance so seriously. And that's why we have a high level of service and and metrics to back it up on our water leaks, sewer spill incidents. And what I meant earlier when thank you very much for everybody congratulating me on my birthday. But I really did mean that. I didn't mean that we're covering each other's backs. What I meant is this is an environment with good teammates and a lot of expertise. And I'll give you an example. We all know about the Thanksgiving example where our employees just jumped at it and volunteered. I didn't need to ask anybody to help out with the spill. Well, that's how it is on a day-to-day basis. And since this coronavirus has hit, I don't see, sick leaves that happen and vacations that are being taken right now. Everybody's taking operation of this system seriously. So very much in appreciation, and I really wanted to bring this out so the customers know that we always have their best interest at heart, and that's what I can guarantee you that is what our employees are doing out there in serving potable water, wastewater service, and recycled water. I did want to ask the public for a bit of patience with us. Obviously, with the coronavirus issue, we have to be vigilant. So we really are taking the proper precautions and making this a primary objective to make sure that we're delivering a high level of service throughout this incident. So there are going to be other auxiliary issues that come up, and we are trying to prioritize it the best that we can. But right now, human health and safety is our primary objective. So that's my only plea to the public, to have a bit of patience with us, and we will make sure that we treat you fair along the way, and we won't forget about your concerns along the way as well. So that would conclude my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Bill, anything further tonight?
Thank you, Dennis. At the last ISDOT meeting, I think it's important to bring up, and by the way, happy birthday again. But it's good to bring up one of the reports was from the OCOG, the Regional Governments Council of Governments, and Director Mike Schaefer brought this to our attention. Well, I think we've all heard about RHNA, or the the state's housing proposal, and what's happening is SCAG kind of is somewhat in the driver's seat of helping construct this thing, and SCAG has to the maybe out of balance. Orange County increased their RHNA, we'll call it quota, and decreased the Inland Empire as well as the LA County. So our folks at Orange County, COG and so forth, are not very happy with this. They're recommending, SCAG is recommending an increase of housing for this regional housing need, 183,000 units in Orange County. And they have it broken down by various cities. Of course, Irvine is not happy with this because there are 23,000 needing additional. This is for the affordables. So Irvine is really getting hammered in a big way. Anaheim, 17,000 units. So, and the unincorporated area is 10,000. Westminster is about 9,700. So that's a big hit on some of these local jurisdictions. Our little Dana Point is 529 additional housing units is being proposed by SCAG. So where special districts comes into this is we have to provide services for all these extra people. And so we need to be looking at our, if this goes through, we have to be looking at our master plans to see if we can accommodate all these things. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Doug?
I have 2 700 forms, which I think I've gotten in, so just give you that. Happy birthday, Rick. To echo your comments about the coronavirus, the COVID-19, I think there's something that we probably want to take advantage of from a PIO standpoint. I was at the grocery store and tried to buy toilet paper. There is no toilet paper anywhere in South Coast. What they did have is the flushable wipes, which are not flushable. So what we should do is maybe step up a little on the PIO in publicizing that right now. I know we've done a good job on that before, but with people needing to buy toilet paper and not being able to buy it, they may go to the flushable wipes and look to where it says flushable, and flush them. Or you may see paper towels or, other things. So hopefully the field guys are aware, and hopefully we don't end up with some additional spills because people are getting desperate.
All right, that concludes our, I'm sorry.
Comments from the guys
Oh, I'm sorry, Wayne? Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I have nothing to add. I would like to reinforce Doug's comment about the flushable wipes that are not flushable, and wish, again, Rick a very, very happy birthday. And that's it for me.
Rick, you're up.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. Again, happy birthday to Rick. Congratulations on making it to the top of the bell curve. And as Dennis said, yeah, the other side is a lot quicker than the front side. To the discussion of the COVID virus, we were lucky enough to get some toilet paper at Costco, but we were going to be hoarding that, so we don't have any for sale. But also what was curious was how much bottled water folks were buying. And again, I think that could provide an opportunity for our PIO to reinforce that the water coming out of your tap and your faucet is perfectly safe, and that there is no transfer at this point known for the virus to come through your water supply that comes into your home. So I think that maybe to dovetail on Director Doug Erdman's request for public information, I think this would be a good opportunity as well to try to alleviate any of the panic that's in the community over possible ways that this can be contracted, and commodities that are being snatched up and hoarded, because there's really no need for that. And with that, I did attend the Waco meeting, and we had the pleasure of hearing Joe Berg speak to the group. He dovetailed more at a regional approach on water loss and water distribution. So it was kind of much like he delivered to us in his presentation, but more at kind of a macro level. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I'd just conclude this evening by thanking staff for the response that you had to the issues, the public safety issues and public health issues that are going on right now. And I'm glad that we've got a program that is rolling out, and as we will be flexible and adaptive as we learn more and get more instructions from the public health people who are at the forefront of this whole episode. Also wanted to thank the staff members who are not here in this room, but in the adjoining room, watching and participating in our meeting this evening. A couple of things that we do have to look forward to in the future is our budget cycle is coming up, and I know the staff is working diligently to prepare some budgets and get that ready for our examination. We also have a study that is in progress on the financial wherewithal of the district to be able to take care of Doheny Desal. And we were expecting a report on that topic by the end of April, I believe. So that's an important topic. Stay tuned on that. You did hear from Mr. Kidman on this evening on the efforts that the district is making to deal with the issue on the California voting rights matter. We're very glad to have had that report tonight. So all in all, I think we've had a very busy but enjoyable meeting. And Rick, happy birthday. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.